Hello everyone. I've done the first video for the Franz Fanon Black Skin White Mask review series. However, because it's too long, I need to edit it down, I need to do some sort of verification process before I can upload it. It is done, I just need to sort out some irritating technical things. In the meantime, I thought I would do a more general discussion kind of thing about coronavirus and what could come after it. The problem with theorizing what could happen in the future is, quite obvious. You don't know what's actually going to happen. It could be a situation where people realize the shortcomings of the market system, because what we've seen since the shutdowns in particular and the quarantines all across the world, early March or so, is more fundamental than a failure from the market. You've seen a complete inability for the market to succeed in effectively dealing with the crisis, and that is very, very different from it simply failing to address certain things. It is unable to do anything other than fail. And that's for a very simple reason. Let's say, for example, that you need factories and companies, producers, to get together and make this product. Let's say face masks, right? Problem is that involves them reorientating production away from a product which makes them profit into a product which perhaps makes them less profitable, or is less profitable for them. Now, the obvious sort of response why they wouldn't do that is, oh, well, they just want to make money for themselves, which obviously, of course, they do. But there's also the fact that if they don't act in a profit-seeking way, which is what the market requires of them, they will simply cease to exist as a company. So there's a fundamental problem with the market system, and a situation where you need to have a certain amount of products produced, regardless of whether it is profitable and economically profitable to do so beyond human concerns and the human cost of not doing something. At the point where that ceases to be the case, where doing a certain action or producing certain things is not profitable, surprise, surprise, these companies aren't going to do it of their own fruition unless ordered to by the state or subsidized to do so. In either situation, that is not a market action. If a state decides to subsidize a company to make certain things, these masks, for example, or the gloves that care workers, or hospital staff need to keep themselves safe, keep their patients safe. If that is subsidized by the state, that is inherently not a market action anymore. You have taken production away from the market, to an extent, of course, not entirely, in order to have a certain need met, and that has been planned centrally. Now, no, economic planning does not necessarily rely upon centralized planning. You can have decentralized as well, but in this situation, it would be very, very centralized. And of course, the alternative to subsidy is quite simply the state forces a company to produce something, irrespective of whether it's economically viable to do so. Now, avoiding sort of the moral ramifications of that, is that the right thing to do? Is it an acceptable thing to do, given that ramifications could have for jobs, or for companies in a profit-seeking system? That still is not a market action, and yet it is a necessary one to address the crises that we're facing. And so the problems of a market system are fundamentally revealed at that point, simply because the market is unable, by its very features, inherent features and implications, unable to address the crisis, especially in such a short time frame. So, best case scenario, people are reflective of that fact and they want to move, and by best case scenario, I mean for people who are like-minded in my direction, they realize that a market system probably isn't the best way of setting up a society and economy, given how unstable it is and how inadequate it is for addressing these crises. And one of the most common criticism leveled against planned economics within a socialist context, at least, and socialism in general by extension, because the connotation of socialist economy is a planned one, which isn't necessarily the case, but it's besides the point, really. The criticism, the primary one, of socialist economics is its inefficiency. But surely the idea of efficiency needs to be qualified, especially in light of this crisis in particular, and the limitations of the market's ability to be efficient in meeting certain needs. No system is in any way perfect, but I think there is this assumption, particularly the rise in neoliberalism in the 70s and 80s, that the free market provides. And as by extension, because it provides in this idea, it cannot not provide. And at that point, it sort of mythicizes the idea of a market as being this efficient entity, but efficient only under the terms by which it decides to be efficient. And the idea of efficiency in itself becomes valid only in the way in which the market deems the idea of efficiency to be validated. And so any form of efficiency outside the profit-seeking realm, which the market relies upon, that's its form of efficiency, is simply not efficiency. But as this crisis is demonstrating, that's simply not the case. Efficiency means providing the resources you need and people around the world need, particularly in hospitals and health centres and care workers, the products they need to be able to do their jobs properly and reduce this and tackle this crisis, irrespective of whether it's profitable to do so or not. Now, of course, the problem that could arise, and in many ways already have arisen from this crisis, is increased xenophobia, racism, authoritarianism, and political parties and governments around the world using this crisis as an excuse to solidify authoritarian powers. I think that's what's been done in Hungary recently. And what I think is going to happen in the long term, if we're talking about, okay, will the world that we lead into be a better one or a worse one, it's going to be both. Because I don't think it can ever be said that progress, which, I mean, it could come with progress, it could come genuinely with the idea of wanting to improve hospital structures, improve provision of medical aid, of benefits, particularly when we talk about universal basic income, which has been floated by even Republicans in America, of all people. The cases for these very good ideas and these good programs and policies, fully funding a single-payer system in the American context, but basically as a free healthcare system, without the insurance that causes so many problems with efficiency in hospital administration, for example. This could be something which, because it's increased the necessity of these policies, could actually lead to a better world in terms of having these policies fought for harder, introduced earlier than perhaps they would have been. But of course, there's also the problem of, well, what kind of world will it look like going in with all these policies still, with authoritarianism on the increase, racism and bigotry of all kinds? So with any progress, I think this will lead to a mixed bag. But either way, whatever happens, there is no going back. The world has fundamentally changed because it's entered a coordinated lockdown for the first time in human history. But you can imagine the first time when the world has to coordinate to shut itself down. That's never happened before. Not like this. And people aren't going to forget that. Either by the amount of people who tragically died, or by the implications of quarantine in terms of how it forces you to perceive society and the world around you. I think that there is going to be a fundamental rethinking of the kind of society you want to live in. Now, whether that's good or bad awaits to be seen. So, those are some general thoughts about this crisis. I'm going to post this video and hopefully try and get the video about my review series up and going. It's just taking a bit of time at the moment. Leave comments below, hopefully civil ones, and yeah, keep safe, stay inside. Bye.